Welcome back to the Changemaker podcast. I'm your host, Deke Copenhaver. Today, my long-awaited guests, the Bergamot, one of my favorite bands, a musical duo, headed up by Jillian Spence and Nathaniel Paul Hoff, who are a married couple as well. They were formed in 2010 in South Bend, Indiana. They're known for their songwriting, uplifting music, and entertaining shows. Their sound is often compared to Monsters and Men and many other bands. In 2017, the Bergamot won the Project Loft Start competition, and People magazine, one of my favorite magazines, by the way, said they were the hottest emerging music talent, while Air Milk wrote that the Bergamot is the perfect blend. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friends, Jillian and Nathaniel.
Welcome to the Changemaker podcast, hosted by Deke Copenhaver. Deke is the author of The Changemaker, a Forbes publishing book that has reached #1 on Amazon on multiple occasions and in multiple categories like management skills and total quality management. During this podcast, Deke interviews exceptional change-making leaders. Deke currently operates Copenhaver Consulting, where he helps local governments and other public organizations maximize their potential. He's also a sought-after public speaker. We hope that the Changemaker has an impact on you today and that you find takeaways that make you a better leader in your life. Now, here's Deke.
Thank you so much, Deke. We're so happy to be on your podcast. We did it. We're here. We're all together.
Man, how long? We've been trying this for like 6 months or something. Longer than that.
Easy.
Funny how life gets in the way, man. It's just been a crazy couple of months.
I was dealing with a little cancer deal, and you guys were basically off jaunting around the world and around the country, playing gigs and promoting your documentary, State of the Unity, which congratulations on all the success of that. It has just been, I've been following you guys on Instagram and just go like, man, you guys have just blown up.
Thank you. It's been a heck of a journey, 8-year labor of love, making this film, coming out with it last fall, having it on Apple TV and Amazon, and being out in the world, promoting it has been really cool. And to see the impact that the film has had has been really powerful.
Yeah. I think the craziest thing for me was when we landed in Variety magazine. I was like, wait, what? Like we're originally from Indiana, like the cornfields of Indiana. And we're like in LA doing our world premiere, which sold out. And we got this distribution deal out of LA. And we were just like, wait, what is happening right now? Like, how is this possible?
No, that's what I always tell people. I'm like, I feel like I've got this Forrest Gump lifestyle, which is like, how am I doing this stuff? But it's so cool to see people that appreciate it, that it's not like, oh gosh, we have this entitlement mentality. We deserve all this success. I mean, God is blessing you, but it's not like this was overnight success. For our listeners and our viewers, tell them, a little bit about the band starting, but then how you came up with the idea for the documentary, which, as I say, is blowing up. Everybody that I send the trailer to just goes nuts because I believe it's what people want to see right now.
Yeah, we started, I was born in Michigan City, Indiana, Jillian in South Bend. We met in South Bend, started really making music full-time in 2010, 2009, 2010. Went on tour, started playing some shows as the Bergamot. That was the name that we landed on for the band, kind of an uplifting essential oil that brings, a way to expel the bad energy from your life. So we thought this would be a great way for us to name our band and to be on tour with that. And we really loved it. But one of the things that, and we were just grassroots touring, mostly playing house shows, backyards, things like that. And it wasn't anything super grand.
And we were always songwriting together. So before we met each other in high school, I was songwriting, he was songwriting. Then our art teacher, Kitty Gunty, was a real big advocate. She's like, I need you two to write a song to represent our high school, Marion High School, in a state competition. And then out of thousands of schools and tens of thousands of submissions, we ended up making it the top 10. And that's what I feel like really sealed the deal, because we took our song, our first original song, and it made it to state. And we really got to spend a lot of time together. And we really enjoyed each other, and we loved creating music together. So that was the beginning.
Yeah. And then after spending some time on the road, being kind of in these more personal grassroots scenarios across the country, from New York to California and from Indiana to Florida, we were really starting to feel this divide that was happening. And in 2015, when my grandfather passed away, only 6 months after my grandmother had passed away, I was thinking about, I think any sort of death in the family leads people to some sort of existential crisis. Why are we here? What is the point of, if we're making music, what's the point of that? He had 10 kids, they had 10 kids together and a beautiful life. And I thought, what would be a great way to honor them and their legacy of bringing an accommodating and open home to so many people in their lives and creating a family table that really reflected how this country looks. And so we thought it would be really cool to go across the country and have people sign our car with their message of unity, because one, we had a basically worthless Volvo at 260,000 miles. And we were getting ready to sell it for parts, I think, for $100. So we thought, this thing's basically worthless. Like, we can't do anything to the outside that could devalue it. I think all that people wanted is for the engine and for the parts. And so we were also seeing a growing divide happening in the country at the time. Yeah. And I think that we were starting to feel this divisiveness that was growing and starting to really come to a culmination in 2015, 2016. And we were just so lucky that at that particular moment, that divine inspiration that happened at that moment in 2015, we both said yes. We want to go to all 50 states. We want to interview people. We want to have them sign our card with their message of unity and kind of see where people are at. And obviously what started off as this kind of journey and trying to get to all 50 states, kind of this epic journey, turns into more of a story about human empathy, understanding, perseverance, and what it means to be American these days, right? I mean, what it means to look across the aisle and say, hey, you may not look like me, vote like me, or be like me, but that doesn't mean that we can't work together. And I think that part of the film was about just going out into the country and finding good people from all walks of life. And I think ultimately, a lot of people are able to walk away from the film with a lot of unexpected experiences from people that you didn't see these moments coming from. And I think that's an exciting part of the film and part of opening people's minds up and also giving people empathy and trying to understand what's going on in our country.
Exactly. And really, for me, I exist at the grassroots level, as you guys do. And I'm like, if you're out there at the grassroots level across the country or even across the world, I mean, it doesn't feel as divided as if maybe you're going to right-wing, left-wing political rallies. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of what the mainstream media, is generally covers the extremes politically. So, it starts with us, who I've told y'all about. So we did a study on, leading up to the midterms 2 years ago on who gets the most coverage in Congress. So Marjorie Taylor Greene gets 10 times more coverage than anybody else. So I'm like, what has it felt like for you guys being out there? I mean, throughout America, just on the road at the grassroots level. I mean, does it feel as divided, or does it feel, I think people are just confused because they're like, I don't hate my neighbor in most situations. Maybe some people do, but it's just politics and the media seem to at times contribute to the divisiveness.
Yeah, I would say that as we're on the ground from a grassroots level, day to day, meeting with hundreds and thousands per week, different people across the spectrum and board the lines of political spectrum, I find that people have a curiosity about the people on the other side. They don't know necessarily how to talk to them. And a lot of people are really frustrated. They're hurting. They're in pain. They're very afraid. They're feeling a lot of fear right now. And we've kind of seen this binary system really kind of implode in a way, because there are only two choices and it's us versus them. Yeah. And it's not healthy, because at the end of the day, we forget that we're actually living in a democracy where in this democracy, half the time I might get what I want, half the time you might get what you want, but we're actually all Americans, and we're forgetting that's kind of being torn and ripped away from like our ideologies of how we perceive ourselves in our tribe within this country. And so I think tribalism, which is something that's innate to us as humans, but it's actually really starting to hurt us because we're on our devices, and these algorithms are just feeding us what we want to hear that just promotes what we want in our tribe. And it's making us become hateful and more fearful and more anxious. But then when you get real people together, but let's say at a concert, because art unites us. You get real people together at a concert, you're standing with each other. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat or independent.
No.
You're singing the songs, you're laughing, you're focused on the art, you're focused on curiosity and wonder. Those are the things that bring us together. And the three things that can actually bring us together are war, are horrible, terrifying circumstances, right? Like terrorist attacks or trauma.
Yeah.
And then the final thing is art. So what we did is we took our art, so we took our voices, our guitar, his guitar, our voices together, and our car, which turned into a mobilized art piece. And we just held space, all 50 states, 270 cities, and we did 264 shows. And at the end, our car hit like 300,000 miles. And there's thousands of messages of positivity from Democrats and Republicans and independents and people who don't even vote and people who aren't even sure where they fit in our democracy. And you know, it was incredible.
And I also think too, talking to the extremism and the amount of media coverage. I mean, if you think about it, right, like, you know, the feeling that people get when you're supposed to be doing work and you're on your phone and you're being entertained by someone who's doing something that's entertaining, whether it be good or bad. I just feel that that's kind of what we've had so far in our country over the last 15 years of having cell phones, is that their extremism is entertaining for people for some reason. It's just, it appeals to something inside of humanity. And so I just think we're reaching a time though in American history where we are just tired of being entertained and we actually want to get work done. And what we're realizing is that a lot of times the people who are entertaining on social media and stuff like that, they're actually not doing the work. And a lot of times the people who are doing the work are the ones who are not being covered by the media, the ones who are not being, you know, put on the front page of it, because they're just in their space doing the work, trying to get people to work together. And that's just not that entertaining. And I just think that we've had this blurring of entertaining and actual production. I think it's time we have to get back to work.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because I think with the mainstream media, the broadcast media, it's sort of the same way that the print media was when digital came out. It's like, okay, well, digital's a fad, so we're not going to change what we do. We're just going to double down. But the same thing I think with broadcast media, it's like, well, we've made hundreds of millions of dollars doing it the same way. But now, particularly Gen Z, you know, they're getting most of their information from, you know, podcasts effectively. But still, it's like, oh, we've always done it this way. So I just agreed to go on the advisory board for the Forward Party that Andrew Yang and Christine Todd Whitman and a group I started 2 years ago. But I had a conference call with them last week, and they were saying along those lines that, you know, you see all the coverage of the protests on college campuses, but you guys are out of New York, said that I guess the student delegation or the student government wrote an op-ed piece describing what was really going on at Columbia. It got no media coverage whatsoever. It's gotten like 1 million hits, 1 million views. So the message is getting out there, but it's like, why would you, when you've got people that are right there in the middle of it, sort of trying to give you a real life on the ground picture of what's going on, why is that not news?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it just doesn't fit. Yeah, it doesn't fit exactly what they're trying to show. And we all know that when you're making a newscast, if you omit certain statements by people and then smash things together, you can get a totally different outcome. And I just think that a lot of times those inconvenient narratives of people working together, people doing good work together, it doesn't work into the, hey, you need to live in fear. You need to hate your neighbor. You need to live with and I just think that narrative, I think it's run its course, and hopefully we're getting to the other side of that.
I would say, real quick. I would say that what I found out here is that a country that is divided is easily manipulated and controlled and profited on. And so the thing that I actually really have spent the last few years studying is like the trail of profit. Who's making money on this division? Like literally, so we made State of the Unity Part 1. And right now we're raising $1.5 million to make a sequel. And so in that sequel, we're going to be deep diving on how did we get here and who's profiting on this and how the heck do we get out of this? Because we really want to give people things that they can actually use, like real tools in their life to be like, okay, I can be a part of being a bridge instead of being so divided, but people don't know where to start.
Well, it's interesting. So I first ran for mayor in 2005. So totally positive campaign. I'm 37 years old, naive, but we had a bunch of 20 and 30 something year olds running it. But that energy was so contagious. it helped us win that first election with 56% of the vote. I ran again in 2006 because I was fulfilling an unexpired term. We ran same thing, positive, totally grassroots oriented, won with 65% of the vote. In 2010, did it again, 64% of the vote. And that year, I asked people to give to local nonprofits instead of my campaign because it was the height of the recession. So I'm like, I've got proof of concept, but then I contracted to run my first campaign this past spring to get our mayor a full and equal vote with the other members of the local government. So positive, inclusive, uplifting, basically focused on bringing people together on common ground. So the first three that we did locally averaged winning with 64% of the vote. This one was 74%, 10 years out of office. So I'm like, okay, over a 19-year span, I've got 4 case studies that show that if you do it differently, you're not getting a 51-48 or 52-48 or 51-49, where half the people are frankly pissed off because their candidate lost. You're bringing people together to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And
Yes.
it works.
Yes.
It wins.
Yep.
I love it. I love that you've had this perspective of uplifting people, not tearing each other down for a long time. You've lived your life like that. And everything that you do and touch and create, it has that theme, which is how we found each other in the first place, which
exactly.
is amazing.
And I think that what you're saying speaks to this idea that people are just tired of having a common enemy. Why don't we just try having a common goal? And I just feel that if we just look at the enemy side of it, it's like, hey, how much further back in time do you want to go? Do you want to just do we want to set ourselves back another decade, 2 decades, 3 decades? Or are we going to look at the common goal and say, hey, you know what, this is what we're all trying to achieve, right? And we talk about this in the film. It's like we're trying to get safety, right? Like most people, they want safety and they just don't know how to get to that. They may have a different idea on how to get to that, but they're just ultimately trying to get to a place of safety for themselves, for their children, for their family. And I just think that it's a time, the last decade, we've spent a lot of time in the darkness, and there's been a lot of pop music that's been glorifying the dark trenches of humanity and being wrong is being right. Well, I think we're just kind of tired of that, and we're ready to move into a space where it's like, what can I do today to help my neighbor, to help my community, to have this common goal of making the world a better place? And we were just driving here in Michigan, and we saw for the first time, somebody that says in their yard sign, it says, together we will save democracy. And I think that we're living through a time right now that is more true than ever, where it's just everyday people who have to wake up like ourselves and say, hey, what can we do to contribute? And we'll find more people. And in that, you get this swell of people that have a common goal, and there's real power in that.
Well, I will tell you, so a good friend of mine that I've referenced often on the show, Manu Meal, is the CEO of Bridge USA, 25 years old, amazing young man. But so 2 months ago or so, he said, so they're on 60 college campuses, they're bringing students with differing ideologies together to talk about how do we solve the big picture issues in our nation. But he said, since October 7th, we have had more substantive talks on college campuses between Jewish students and Muslim students than we've ever had before. But basically saying, we've been at this since 2020, so these students know each other and they have a bond of trust. But he said, but we get no media coverage whatsoever. But maybe the mainstream media is starting to figure it out, because that initiative made the front page of the Wall Street Journal a month ago. And he was so psyched. I'm like, man, I am so proud of you. But for that generation too, they just had to double their staff at Bridge USA because they're growing so fast, which I think is proof positive to exactly what you're saying, Nathaniel. People are just, you can only do dark for so long, but you provided people with an alternative, which is what you're doing musically. I'm doing it politically. They will go to it if they have an alternative.
Yes.
Yep. And I think one of the things
Yeah.
too is speaking to that just really quickly is like, and it's also about being genuine, right? Like I think the younger generations, they know how to figure out if people are truly being genuine. And I think coming at it from a place where it's like, hey, we haven't just been at this, we just didn't pick this torch up because it was convenient and popular in the last 6 months. Like we've been at this for almost the better part of a decade. And we're excited to see what it means because, you know, we've been trying to really bring about meaningful conversations for years now. And as you have as well. And I think it's time for real people to step up and say, hey, you know, this is a way forward. And I think it's exciting.
I totally agree. And I tell people, I'm like, because I know, I've heard that there are actually statistics now that show where Gen Z are actually going back to church. It's mainly non-denominational. But I'm like, it's so often portrayed, oh, well, you know, faith-based stuff has no edge and it's not cool. I'm like, let me tell you about 2 friends of mine that were in Brooklyn and just felt called to travel the nation for, you know, a long, long time. They didn't know if it was going to be successful, but they did that. I'm like, that is pretty edgy and cool to me, I think.
Thank you, Deke. Well, it's so funny because, you know, the divine works in mysterious ways. I don't know if you can hear this bell right now.
Yes, I can.
But it's funny because our life trajectory in 2015 was to make more albums. We were crushing it in New York City. We were performing all throughout the East Coast, all throughout the world. We just finished a Parisian tour. And what we realized is we're doing great. We're like, our music's taking off. Like things are going great. Literally the eve of his grandfather passing away, which was exactly 6 months later than when we lost Grandma Joan. We drove from Brooklyn, New York to South Bend, Indiana. And this was one of the most significant moments of my life because we luckily caught Grandpa Weber a few hours before he passed away. We got to pray over him, sing over him with the whole family, just love on him. And then we went to a family dinner, got in the Volvo station wagon with 260,000 miles in it. Nathaniel put his hands on the steering wheel and we just had a moment of silence. And he looked up at me and he said, I just can't believe he's gone. And he said his legacy was so amazing. His grandfather was a Republican. His grandmother was a Democrat. And he looked at me and he said, wow. He's like, I can't believe it. Like, it just feels so empty. And in that moment, that's literally when the divine, like straight up, like struck him with this vision to go bring people together. The word that came was go out and bring people together. And he looked at me and he told me this vision he had. And I had full body chills on the back of my neck, even on my face. I had chills everywhere. And I was like, what is happening? And he's like, I think we're supposed to go into America this year and like bring people together. I don't even know what that means. I said, what does that mean? He's like, I don't know. I was like, what are we going to do? And he's like, I think we're supposed to use music to invite people into a space where they can maybe like sign our car and then we can ask them questions. And I said, well, what is that word? And we thought about it. We're like, oh, it's unity. We want to unify people through music because we thought what better way to hold space than through art, through bringing people, sharing something that we have and creating a space for them to share with us. And we'd ask people on the journey, what does unity mean to you? And my mind was blown out there. I mean, we would be talking to somebody who's homeless and ask them, what does unity mean to you? And they would blow my mind. And then just a few hours later, we talked to a millionaire and they would sign relatively on the same area of the car. And these messages were so cohesive and so beautiful and unique. And we had thousands of people sign these messages. And this tour changed me because before I went on this tour, I had gotten myself wrapped up in a ball of just thinking one way. I was just like, 25, 26. I went to a liberal arts college. I kind of, I grew up in Indiana. So I had these roots, but then I kind of was like doing my own thing. And I remember just kind of getting wrapped up in this one way of thinking, this one political way of thinking, which was really starting to cause a lot of problems and conflict in my own family, like my core family. Because at that point, all of us were starting to vote differently, think differently, follow different political leaders. And I just remember thinking, man, I think I'm right. I think the way I'm voting is right. And they think they're right. And then I go on this tour and I start talking to people. I just start being quiet and I listen. I just say, I ask a question. I just listen. I listened for 8 months and I came out a different person on the other side. I started realizing oh my gosh, I was wrong in the way I was thinking, because I was thinking I'm right, they're wrong, it's me against them. How could they vote like this? How could they think like this? And then I finished that tour and I was like, holy smokes, I'm the one that needed to change. I needed to open up my mind and my heart to listening to why people are doing what they're doing, why they vote for this person, people are desperate, they're in pain, they're afraid,
Oh
they're
yeah.
losing things that they love, and when you on both sides. And the extremism is actually cutting off this beauty of humanity. It's cutting off civic engagement, which binds us
Oh
to
yeah.
communities.
Yeah.
It's destroying the very fabric of what it was once to be an American, and it still can be. And our democracy is actually built on the strength of communities and friendships
Oh
across
yeah.
the
And
party
diversity.
lines.
I mean, diversity. It's like we are a melting pot. But so, Nathaniel, my dad was a conservative Republican, my mom a liberal Democrat,
Hmm.
never voted the same way in a presidential election in over 40 years of marriage.
Yep.
But it's funny, when you talk about, Jillian, about people being divided and being easily manipulated. So I tell people, I'm like, so extremists like to label people doing what we're doing. Oh, they just want everybody to come sing Kumbaya and all this stuff. I'm like, no, no, no.
Oh,
It's
no.
like we want to be curious about other people, the way other people think. It's the extremes on either side that give litmus tests. Well, if you don't agree with this isn't this, you're not part of us.
Hmm.
I'm like, the middle is where the curiosity is. And I mean, but once you get people talking to each other, like you guys do at concerts or like you're doing, I'm like, you can find value in everybody.
Yeah, and I think that and extremism, and what we say is that what we learned over in Europe is that extremism is not a political line, right? It's
No,
actually a
no.
sphere, and what we're finding is as you go along the political extremism sphere, what you find at the top is extremism, and they're both facing opposite directions, yet they're both unified in the fact that they
Oh,
just
yeah.
want to continue to fight and also clog up progress. And the sad reality is that the extremism is really creating stagnation within
Yep.
this nation. And I think that one of the things that's really scary about that is that people who are extremists, they can say, oh, well, I don't work with that person because they don't vote like me, they don't look like me. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait, you just justified why you don't work. You know what I mean? Like, if you're willing, and we talk about this in the film as well, if you're willing to do the work, it's going to be a challenge to stand next to someone you don't agree with. And let's say, like in the Amish communities where I grew up in Indiana, they don't talk about their beliefs and what they have to work. They just get the work done, right? When you have to
Yeah.
build someone a house and there's a storm coming, there's not a lot of time to sit around and debate the color of the curtains. You have to just do the work. And I think right now in the country, extremists are just very happy doing nothing because they can be lazy.
Yeah.
They can watch their phones. They can just, hit their like button. But the real people in the middle who are curious about making a better world are out there getting busy doing the work. And I think that's threatening to people who don't want to see progress being made. And I think we're coming to a time, though, where that has to end because we're getting left behind. I mean, cities, communities, all of these things, the road system. I mean, we have to get back to putting things down. And one of the things that we say,
Wait, so you're saying that it's failing because people aren't engaging as
yeah,
much?
because they're
No,
not
you're
engaging as
exactly
much, and they
right.
also, it's because the process is failing because people don't feel engaged.
Well, no, you're exactly right. So I come from a business background before I got into politics. Now I'm back in business. But I'm like, okay, in business, I was in real estate. Okay,
Hmm.
what do? You have both sides sit at the table. You work. I mean, everybody's give and take. You come to a meeting of the minds. Not everybody gets what they want, but you do a deal. But if nobody's sitting at the table, and I think that is a total lack of leadership. And I'm
Yep.
like, you cannot lead to the extremes. I mean, just pandering to the extremes is just that. It is not leadership, whatever, but people do it to get reelected. And it's like, okay, not what have I done for you? I protected you from that other guy. I
Yep.
refused to work with the other side. So you made no progress and you got
Yep.
nothing done,
Yep.
you know?
And I think in general, at this point, just from talking with so many Americans, Americans are frustrated, they're tired, they're afraid, and they're working at least some of them 2 to 3 jobs. Like a
Yeah.
lot of my friends and different people that I'm meeting out here, they're working so many jobs that it's slightly disorienting, and they're doing that to pay their bills, the health insurance, the the food on the table, their mortgages. I know friends that have gotten, 6 months behind on their mortgages. They're having problems paying for their car. And so people are frustrated. They're upset with the leadership.
Yeah.
There's on both sides.
Oh, absolutely.
They're like, how is this possible? This is supposed to be one of the greatest countries on the planet. How are we all getting left behind? And we're working our asses off right now. And I think there's a general frustration right now. And I think that in particular, this election is going to get real interesting as we're kind of getting ready. Nathaniel and I are planning on going to both the RNC and the DNC. We're planning on screening State of the Unity at both. And I think that the Q&As at both of those are going to get really interesting. And I'm very excited about that because we invite difficult questions into what we're doing. I think the more difficult the question, the more authentic, the more real it is. And I think it's important to be open and authentic right now with really where people are at and how can we actually move forward together.
Yeah, one of the things I want to say too about those screenings is that if there's somebody who's watching the podcast, the video, and they want to help support that, you definitely can, because it's we know that there's a certain bar that we have to hit in order to do these presentations at the actual, in the facilities of the convention. So to do it at a theater near the RNC or a theater near the DNC. So if anybody is feeling moved by this and they want to participate in bringing it to these events because they see the value in unity, then definitely hit us up. But one of the things that I wanted to say too was, one of the things that we believe is that one of the reasons that extremism is an all-time high is because civic engagement is at an all-time low. And I think that the reason that we say this is that it's like if you and I are driving on a street, right? And this is kind of a proverbial thing, but we're both driving in opposite directions, but a tree falls in the middle of the street, right? So we both stop. What's the first thing you do? You pull out your phone, you take a photo, you post it to social media, and you say, isn't it horrible when trees fall in the street? And you get 1 million likes. But when you look at this tree, it's still there, right? And then, so what's happening, though, is that as cars are backing up, as the 100th car pulls up and is now laying on its horn, you'll be like, hey, why are you so upset? And you're like, I'm upset because nothing's happening. Nothing is going. I'm just stuck. But it's like, do you know why you're stuck? And they're like, no, I don't know why I'm stuck. I don't know what's going on. I'm just angry, right? But as we are sitting there looking at the problem, you on your side, me on the other, civic engagement is just looking around and saying, you know what? There's a door handle here. I'm going to pull the door handle. I'm going to get out of the car. I'm going to, if I pull a limb and you pull a limb and the 100 people behind me pull a limb, we can pull this whole tree out of the street and get back to progress. And I think that one of the things that the film is doing is it's saying, hey, you might have opportunities to make a better world around you, even with the smallest, even if it's a worthless car that's sitting in your driveway. If you can look at it differently and just look at it as an opportunity to say, hey, maybe I can get people to come together to create something bigger, then it is through civic engagement that we actually can bring people out of extremism, because it's putting people back to work. And when we're all pulling the tree out of the street, it's not about which flag are you flying? What are you doing? It's about doing the work. And I think that this country has to get back to that. I think that we're about focusing, getting back to that through music, through art, through collaboration, through inspiring others to do it. But I think that it has to happen because, we can't just stay stagnant for a while. There's too many powers in the world that will excel past us if we just sit here in our ideology and say, hey, I can't work with people who aren't like me.
No, well, my hope is to take the template of the campaign that we just did here and take it to other communities. Because one of the things I purposely did was engage the younger generation. Because I'm like, the government that we had consolidated in 1996, 28 years ago, and had been dysfunctional for 28 years. But I'm like, you're about to turn 30 and you've never had a say in how your government operates. But I had a 23-year-old girl that's a friend of mine say, I never vote because it doesn't make a difference. I said, I understand that frustration in the national level, but I'm like, Jay, you vote in this and you'll see a difference, literally in a month. So 2 nights later, I went in and she goes, guess who's voting? So now she's so empowered. But so now we have an educated, informed, engaged, and empowered electorate here, because we did total grassroots campaign, myself and the mayor. But when people saw how their government was functioning and why, part of the reason why we were in the state we were in is because they had checked out. I mean, I like to say since I left office, well, maybe not, but they had, and I'm like, this is what happens when you just check out. You've got to be engaged. I mean, that's our duty in my mind as a citizen.
You know what? You are dead on. So the biggest thing that I realized that were my two biggest problems before I did the Unity Collective. One, I had just been drinking the Kool-Aid and the tribe that I was kind of drinking from
Yeah.
and being like, this is all great. We're so right. Everyone's so wrong. So that's one of the things that they kind of push you into. And then the second thing that was my biggest mistake of my life in this realm was that every time I went to vote, I was like, this is awesome. I'm voting for this leader. They're going to do all the work for me. I'm voting for them because they're going to do everything for me. And then I can just check out for the next 4 years until I vote again. And what I learned after doing the Unity Collective and literally blood, sweat, and tears, putting all of our resources for 8 years into this project, into filming, into all the shows, into events and editing and producing and directing, was that this was civic engagement in action. We were actually saying, you know what? We're two people, we're two artists who literally have little to no resources. And whatever resources we do have, we're dumping full blown into this goal of crafting a visual experience that takes you on a journey through America, through empathy, through love, through hardship, through challenges. And with this goal of actually saying we're two people that are Americans and we're going to do something with what little we have to lift up humanity. And we don't have much, and especially when we started, we were really grinding.
Film. I mean, we're sleeping out
grinding, eating out of like vending machines. And so that's just two people. Could you imagine what change could happen? Could you imagine 100 people that have resources? How about 1,000? How about 50,000? How about 1 million Americans with resources of what we could actually accomplish and how fast we could accomplish it with the right leadership? And that's what excites me.
And also just through civic engagement, right? Like it doesn't even take a great leader. It just takes a community coming together to say, we are going to solve these problems regardless of leadership. We are going to lead ourselves. We will save ourselves. And I just think that's such a prevalent theme in the film. Mm-hmm. It's prevalent in the world right now. And I think it's needed more than ever.
Well, and it's funny. We did grassroots outreach to all sectors of the community. People said, you'll never get younger people voting. I'm like, okay, we got them. The first outreach we did was to the Latino community. A pastor that's a good friend of mine and the mayor's, they were so excited because in Augusta, we thought of, politics is just black and white. It was like nobody during political campaigns in Augusta, Georgia, does outreach to the Latino community. They were just excited. And it'd been inviting them to the party. It was so cool. But just seeing how people from all walks of life came together and now they're empowered. And I'm like, if we can do that in Augusta, you can do that any place. But it's we the people need to do this. Yes. We don't need to be waiting for the federal government or the state government to come riding in on a white horse. Because let me tell you, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah. Yes.
That was going back to the tree in the street. It's like, you can call your local and state government to come move the tree for you. But ultimately, the fastest thing that's going to make change happen is if you just get out of the car with others and move the thing. And I think that's just so prevalent right now that it's not about the savior mentality. It's not about, hey, in order for things to be saved, we have to get this guy elected. It's like, no, if you want things to be saved, go freaking save it right now. Don't even worry. Get involved in your community. Get involved in the things that you're passionate about, whatever they may be. And that will lead you hopefully to a better place, and ultimately will lead everybody to a better place just by being engaged once again in the community, not isolated, not extremism, isolationism, more community driven centrism where you're working with people and less focused on how you vote or the flags you fly, rather just saying, hey, I just want to work because I'm just tired of sitting around scrolling on my phone being entertained by these politicians who get all the clicks. I want to see who's out there doing the work and I want to work with them.
No, I agree completely, and I'm a huge Matthew McConaughey fan. Yes. I don't know if y'all saw the interview he did recently that he said we need to be aggressively centrist, and we need to take the microphone away from the extremes. So I commented on that on Instagram, and I was like, we didn't just take the mic out of the hands of the extremists here in Augusta, we dropped the mic on them on May 21st. So I met Katie Couric last year, and she goes, great job, keep doing it. I'm like, what, man, that's cool. Katie Couric actually just noticed what happened here. But it is, he's so right. I'm like, what? I grew up a punk rock fan. The most rebellious thing we can do right now, the extremists are the status quo
Yes.
for us to freaking rebel against.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our team is way cooler than their team.
Man,
Yeah.
we're starting to talk on like revolutionary lines. I'm starting to get excited over here.
That's where good music has always lived.
And it's funny
Yeah.
because as we talk about music, there's a song in our film called 1 Mile that Nathaniel wrote at the end of the 50-state journey when we literally were like washed up rats off a sinking ship. When we finished the end of the filming, you know, we were exhausted and we were literally at the end of our rope. I mean, there was a moment where I kind of looked at him. I'm like, we just spent over 8 months together in 27 square feet. I mean, we survived it, but like, I kind of feel like I need like a break. Like I need to like physically figure
some lingering health issues that needed to be addressed after that.
We did.
Yeah,
we did.
sure.
And also financial issues,
Yeah,
big financial issues. Cause we, you know, we used money that we
We're all
had
in.
and then whatever we didn't have when the car would break, we'd swipe a credit card at like 28%. And that was just not a good situation.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I'm saying this is because at the end, he wrote this anthem. It's called 1 Mile. It happens in the film in a very important part. That's a pivotal kind of moment that there's something that happens to us in the film that's really rough. This song comes in and the line that I'm going to repeat right now, it says, "Together we rise, apart we fall." And this song is so beautiful because it focused on this one aspect. So we went to all 50 states. So we went really wide with the first film, all 50 states, hundreds of cities, and thousands of people played hundreds of songs. And at the end, what Nathaniel and I realized is that real change actually happens. You have to look at yourself in the mirror. Then you have to go. And once you change and once you get good with the God or the divine, you go to your kitchen table, get good with your family. You go to your front door, get good with your neighbors. And then you get good with everybody within just 1 mile of where you live. If everybody could see this and hear this message and start implementing this, you could see change happening really, really fast, quickly across our country and across the world. And it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It's just really getting, you know, going internal, being like, wow, am I the problem? If I am the problem, what do I need to do to not be the problem, be this part of the solution, to be more loving and empathetic and forgive yourself, then forgive those at your table and love people more and more deeply. And so the song 1 Mile really encapsulates that. And I just love it. And every time I sing it live, I sometimes will get chills on stage because I'm like, man, like we're out here living it. And there's so many living in this message of 1 mile right now. And it really, that's what excites me. It's the civic engagement that gets me hyped up.
Well, you know, and I tell people, I'm like, look, you know, don't lose hope. I'm a walking miracle. You know, I never had side effects from any of my treatments, 12 months cancer free. Wow. But it's funny, I was doing a speaking engagement and a guy goes, "You don't talk like a politician." I said, "Well, I never really was." I said, "But I'm going to say what needs to be said, because what are you going to do? Take my voice away for a year and give me cancer?" I'm like, been there, done that. I'm going to say what needs to be said. But no, I mean, we could talk for hours and hours and hours, and I want to have y'all back on, and we've got to connect somewhere out there on the road. But I mean, just thank you for doing what you guys are doing. You inspire me so, so much. And I mean, you guys are just an awesome couple and just awesome human beings. But as we get down towards the end, so I always ask my guests 2 questions. Okay, where can people find you?
Yeah, for sure. The number one thing we're saying right now,
obviously, they can find you at a library in Michigan.
Yeah,
yes!
Exactly.
In Hart, Michigan.
Well, obviously, there's thebergamot.com. But right now, you can Google State of the Unity. It's on Apple TV. It's on Amazon. It's a great film to start conversations. What we encourage people is to have watch parties, invite people in your neighborhood over to see this film, have meaningful conversations around what it means within your community, within these things, and, you know, start it there. So State of the Unity, The Bergamot, and Jillian has some other ones as well.
Oh, yeah. And then pro tip, when you are looking us up on Spotify or Apple Music, it's The Bergamot, 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 no N. when I first heard the name back in college, I thought there was an N in there. So I always tell people that. And then stateoftheunity.com. And then, of course, you can follow our journey every single day on Instagram at The Bergamot and State of the Unity, and also on Facebook.
And we're both linked up there. We have personal accounts you can follow as well. We're all linked up on
Jillian
those.
Spies, Nathaniel Paul Hoff
on Instagram. And we're posting all the time, even
cool.
when we're hanging out at the library.
And my last question for you guys. My last question for you guys is, on a daily basis, what puts a smile on your faces and brings joy to your heart?
Oh, I love this, Deke. Oh my gosh. On a daily basis, I would say the simplest thing is literally connecting with human beings on any level, just smiling at someone, saying, hi, how are you doing today? This conversation is bringing a lot of joy to my heart right now. Getting to finally connect with you, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Deke. And yeah, I think also just making sure I pray and meditate in the mornings. I always love doing that. It sets off the day on the right direction.
Yeah, I think one thing that just makes me excited day after day, and being out in the country, you see this all the time, is that, there's some people who cower in the face of adversity, in the face of challenge, and then there's the people who rise up and do incredible things regardless of their circumstances, and we meet those people all the time. I feel like there's just so many incredible people out there with stories that are just mind-bending when you think about what they've accomplished given their physical limitations or whatever it may be. And so I just think that all the challenges that we face right now are only going to call up more powerful champions. And I hope that we're living in a time where the people who are going to rise up to the challenge can be the real people that they say, and can provide hope and a light forward going into the future. And I think that that's what gives me hope, is that there are a lot of people doing it. We're just glad to be doing our part with art, music, and doing this. And I hope that others can be inspired by that as well. There's a lot of people out there doing it. So let's all join together and make a better world.
I couldn't agree more, ladies and gentlemen. My guests, the Bergamot, Jillian Spence and Nathaniel Paul Hoff. Man, thank y'all for for shining a light in this world, and for never giving up, and for being rebels of the good kind.
Hey,
thank you. It takes one to know one, friend. Thank you for all the work you're doing. I appreciate you.
You're incredible. Story.
Yes.
You're inspiring every day.
Well, thank y'all. That is all the time we got. Dropping the mic, and we are out. Hey guys, thanks for listening to or watching the Changemaker podcast today. Greatly appreciate it. If you're listening and you want to see the video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Deke Copenhaver. That's pretty easy to remember, I would think. But really, we also want to remind you to like, subscribe, rate across all platforms, download. And if you're looking for a coach, a speaker, or anything, you know where to find me. Just email me at dekecopenhaver.com. And thanks so much for listening.